Here tonight. How many of y'all went home and took a nap today with the time change? Come on, let me just see some honest hands. Anybody? A couple people? Okay, backstage they were talking about how they were all like napping today and they have to get their body clocks adjusted. Last week we started this series, Be Rich. You can see it with the big banner back there and the logos right here. I love this season that we do every year, this series, because it's a way of really kind of recalibrating our hearts. Not only towards God, but towards our community, towards our stuff. Now, the Be Rich theme logo is kind of weird to go into a church. You see this big banner that just says, Be Rich, right? But it actually comes from the Apostle Paul's instruction to a young protege, Timothy. And in a letter he wrote, known as 1 Timothy, here's what he says. He says, command those who are rich in this present world, that's us, believe it or not, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant and think that we're entitled and all of that, or to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain. One blink of the economy, one burst of a bubble, and all of a sudden, there it goes, right? Instead, it says, tell them to put their hope in God, who richly provides with everything for our enjoyment. He gives us everything for our enjoyment. So he wants us to enjoy the stuff that he gives us, the riches that we have, the wealth, and all the stuff that kind of comes with that. But we all know that there's a good way and there's a bad way to be rich, because there's some people, all of their enjoyment comes from their wealth, and it causes them to turn inward. And so the series is really about how do we be good at being rich. And here's what he says to do. He says, command them to do good and to be rich, there it is, in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. And so last week, if you weren't here last week, go online and you can watch last week's message and get the, kind of running started today. But one of the things we said was, pretty much all of us are rich. Now, there may be somebody here, or there may be somebody that you know that we would say, okay, they legitimately qualify as poor. But the truth is, if we're all sitting in here with an electronic device in our pocket and the cell service and everything else to actually watch this later from a device in our pockets, you're rich. If your kids have a device in their pockets, I promise you, you're rich. They don't feel like it, but you're rich. And so he says that, by putting our wealth, not so much in our stuff, but in what we do with our stuff, good deeds, being generous, and willing to share, he goes on and says, in this way, what we do with our stuff, we lay up treasures for ourselves or for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life. And so the reason we don't feel rich is because, we talked about this last week, is because there's not enough margin, or we don't have any financial margin. We spend everything before it comes in. It's kind of like we eat the meal before we have the food, which is a weird way of even talking about it, because that's not possible. But yet financially, that's what we do. On credit cards, or however we borrow the money, or however we do it, we actually spend it before we get it. It's like trying to eat the meal before you have the food. Right? And it's just like, after a while you sit there and go, how do you even wrap your brain around that? But that's the craziness that we have in our world. And so there's no margin. When money comes in, it's already gone out. And without that margin, we feel broke all the time. The other reason we don't feel rich is because we compare ourselves to other people and what they have and what we don't. And we don't realize that they're comparing themselves to us and what we have and they don't. And that's why we feel like we're not rich. Or it's because we know what's available. We know all the stuff that's out there that we could have that we don't have, right? We can see it in the ads on our devices. We can see it through, catalogs, magazines, whatever it may be, on TV and media, and just go into a store. And so those are the reasons we don't feel rich. But the truth is, we're pretty rich. And it's what we do with our riches that really determine the quality of our life. And I love this phrase, truly life. Now, I'm going to get back to that in a minute. Just want to highlight that for you, because we're going to get back to what does that really mean? Truly life, truly, or have life that is truly life. Now, the intent of this series, as I mentioned last week, and I just want to probably remind us every week, is not to make anybody feel guilty, but it's to make us all feel more responsible. Because, see, rich people are not more loved by God, but we are more responsible or accountable to God for the stuff that He's given to us. All right, so we're held into an account for the riches that we have. And that's what this series is about. It's about making us more responsible, because there are sometimes we just get lax. There's sometimes that we just allow the flow of culture, the consumerism and all that to kind of grip us and grip our hearts, and we don't realize it until we've kind of crossed some lines we never thought that we would cross when it comes to our stuff. Now, Before we started this Be Rich series, we had a Mojo series that lasted forever. Okay, and a lot of people like the Mojo series have said, oh, I hate that we're not going on with the Mojo series. I said, there's going to be parts of Mojo that's going to come back. And so if you weren't here for the Mojo series, let me just kind of catch you up. Mojo is this slang word that's used in culture today, okay? And it's really about positive momentum, right? There's the mo, positive motivation that really kind of, cultivates or fuels in some way a sense of joy. That we get joy out of life when things are going up and to the right. We get joy out of life when our skill set, our opportunities, our abilities, and all that stuff is working right. When we have momentum, motivation, and things are going right, we end up with a sense of joy, and there is your mojo. I think that's what Paul was talking about when he used that word or that phrase, truly living. That in our generosity and the way that we give and the way that we leverage our stuff for something greater than ourselves, when we do that, we experience some level of mojo, positive momentum, right? Positive motivation that cultivates joy. Now, here's the thing. You can chase after wealth. You can chase after the raise, the bigger house, the nicer car, the newer gadget, the better clothes. You can chase after that stuff, and you can experience happiness. I mean, let's just be honest, right? It makes us happy to be able to buy some new stuff or to upgrade our lives a little bit. And there's nothing wrong with being happy, but when you chase after that, the happiness that comes with it is so momentary because there's this stress and anxiety about maintaining it, right? There's the stress and the anxiety and the worry of whenever it wears out, gets old, of getting something else. And so with that stress and anxiety, it's really not joy, it's just kind of this fleeting moment of, woo, now on to what's next. But joy is lasting, and the way that we find this joy, he says, is, first of all, put your trust in God, not your stuff. So by trusting in God more than anything else, and then by living for a cause greater than ourselves, by leveraging our lives and what God's given us to make an impact on others, that's joy. Because listen, even when our stuff is gone, we get to look back at the impact we made on others. And there's a sense of satisfaction. I mean, at the end of your life, when it's all spent, it's all gone, you can't take it with you, you can look back over your life and say, wow, look at the impact I made with my stuff. My stuff may have brought me happiness, but what brought me joy was how I leveraged the wealth and the stuff for something greater than myself. And that's the mojo, I think, that Paul was referring to when he was telling Timothy how to instruct rich people to manage their riches. Now, Mojo also stood for, or stands for us in that series, Moses and somebody else. And so tonight, I want to talk about Moses and Josiah. Some of you go, I don't even know who Josiah is. You might know who Moses is, from Exodus, 10 Commandments, lead my people out of Egypt, let my people go, that guy. We understand who Moses is a lot of times, but Josiah is separated from Moses by 800 years or so. So you got Moses, and then 800 years later, here comes Josiah on the scene. Josiah is a king of Judah somewhere around the years maybe 640 BC. And so understand, when Moses brings the Israelites out of Egypt, leads them through all the wilderness, and then they get into the promised land. Eventually, this family that's now become a nation becomes a kingdom, and they get a king. The very first king is King Saul. The second king, King David. We all remember King David. That's David and the giant, Goliath, or David and Bathsheba, whichever association comes to mind, right? Because we always know David by one of those two relationships, right? Okay, and then way after David, you get David, and then you get Solomon, his son. And after Solomon, the kingdom gets split and gets divided. Northern and southern kingdom. And the southern kingdom is the kingdom of Judah. And so Josiah becomes the king of Judah around 640 BC. You can find his story in 2 Kings 23 and 24 and 2 Chronicles 34 and 35 if you want to read more about this. But in order to understand Josiah and the connection with Moses, you really have to go back to Josiah's father and grandfather. Josiah's father, Amnon, and his grandfather, they both, when they were kings, promoted and practiced idolatry. They were not faithful to having, God as their God, and they weren't faithful to all the covenants and the commands and everything else that you read about when you hear about this relationship God had with Israel and what Moses had given them. They just kind of abandoned that, and they began to worship other gods and erect temples and altars and sacrifices and all this stuff to all of these other pagan gods, and they do so primarily for political and economic reasons. They're creating alliances, or in some cases, maybe it's superstition, or maybe it's some kind of false belief where they want to keep all the gods, whoever they may be, happy so that the land will prosper. But a lot of times it was out of political alliances, it was out of marriages, it was out of, other kings and tribal leaders and people coming through this area and bringing their religion with them. And listen, it got so bad with Josiah's dad that he actually orders the burning of the scrolls. The writings of Moses, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers. He actually orders that they are destroyed. He all but shuts down the temple. I mean, the temple is now really not in operation. People aren't going there. They're going to all these other places. There's still, the Levites, which is the priesthood. That's a tribe, descendants of Abraham. And they are the priest. So there's a little remnant of them going on. But really, the temple's in disarray, and it's not the center of activity like it was. And it's definitely not the center of worship like it was. And he's burned the scrolls because in those scrolls, in the law of Moses, it actually forbids everything that he's doing, and it warns the people of what's going to happen to the land and what's going to happen to their country and what's going to happen to them if they do these things. So, he shuts down the temple. It gets so bad that some of his servants assassinate him. Some would say it was maybe set up by the Levites, that little remnant of priests who kind of set up the assassination because he had just turned so far from God. But when he's assassinated, his son Josiah becomes the king at 8 years old. You can imagine 8 years old being crowned a king over a kingdom. And a lot of times, whenever they were really young like that, someone else was actually ruling and leading the kingdom through them. And so for the first several years of Josiah's reign, we don't see much difference. There's not a whole lot of change going on. It's just kind of following in the wake of dad and what he did. But at age 26, Josiah takes tax money and decides to go down to the high priest and the Levites and say, we need to fix the temple back up. It's in disarray, so let's use some of the tax money and do a whole renovation and remodel and fix this place back up. And in the process of renovating the temple, they discover the book of the law. Some would say it was scrolls that were hidden away, maybe tucked into the walls or somewhere else, being protected from Josiah's father who was burning the scrolls. And he finds the book of the law, and the high priest comes out and says, hey, we found this book, and he begins to read it to the king, and he reads what was taught, to the Israelites through Moses from God, right, about how they're supposed to be this unique people and this unique nation, how they're supposed to be a blessing to all the earth, and not only that, but kind of a light to the entire world. And when Josiah hears this, he rips his garment. He rips his garment as a display of repentance and remorse and grief and sorrow. He calls in like the prophets and prophetesses and people, who are still worshiping God. And he says, is this true? Are the benefits of serving God and the consequences of not serving him true? And they say, yes, it is true. And the nation had so forgotten all of these by and large that Josiah repented, and he said, from this day forward, we will start living like this. We are going to implement the laws of God, the book of the law. We're going to implement this. We're going to live this way. He starts getting rid of the idol worship, getting rid of all the other temples, all of the other altars, and he starts putting into practice all the things that were taught to the Israelite people through Moses. Some would say that the book he found was actually the book of Deuteronomy. It's called, the word Deuteronomy, strange word, but it actually means second law. And it doesn't mean like it's the laws of Moses part 2. It's the second telling or the second record of the laws. But some other historians would say that Moses really didn't write Deuteronomy. And I tend to agree with that. Now, maybe wrong. But the reason I tend to agree with that, because the book of Deuteronomy records Moses' death and what happens to his body after he died. So I really don't think Moses recorded his own death and what happened to his body after he died. What I actually think is what a lot of historians would say is the book of Deuteronomy was probably written around the time of Josiah. Again, maybe wrong. But the reason that would have happened is because Deuteronomy is like a summary of Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. So when you take the books of Moses, the laws of Moses, when you take the account of Exodus and you abbreviate it into a summary, you take all of those things that happened at Mount Sinai and all the stuff that happened in the wilderness and the laws of God, and then you have Moses giving his final appeal to the people before they go into the promised land and reminding them of everything. It's like the book of Deuteronomy is taking all of that story of Moses and the people of Israel and summarizing it into one book. And that would make sense of why it's called the second account or the second law. And when Josiah started reading the book of the law and he started implementing these things in the nation, it led to sweeping reforms throughout the nation. It turned the nation around, and for a season, they had incredible economic prosperity. They had a season of peace. There were so many good things that were happening in the nation just because they lived according to these laws. Now, just think in our own country. When things aren't going well, why is it that sometimes we look to nations who are doing worse for our examples? I mean, I don't know, for some of you who follow politics, you'll understand, because there's all this talk about what we should do with healthcare and this and the other, but a lot of times we take our cues from countries that aren't even doing as well as we are in a lot of cases. If we're really going to turn a country around, shouldn't we look back to countries who have had great positive turnaround? I mean, if your family's not doing well, wouldn't you take your cues from a family who wasn't doing well, turned it all around, and suddenly we're doing great? Or would you look to the family who's pretty much on the downhill, slide? I mean, of course it makes sense. We're going to look to a country that had a dramatic turnaround. We're going to look to a family that has a dramatic turnaround. And so we ought to look at what happened with Josiah and the nation of Israel and what caused them to have such a dramatic turnaround. And what it was the book of the law. And so if we go to the book of Deuteronomy, here's some things that Josiah put into practice based on what he read about Moses that turned the nation around. Deuteronomy chapter 15. At the end of every 7 years, you must cancel debts. I can pause right there. Now, I know whenever I read this, I'm sitting there going, woohoo! You know why? Because I got debts, right? Anybody out there got a debt? Right? House payment, car payment, some kind of debt, right? Student loans. Anybody still paying off student loans, right? For a degree that you do not use at the job that you currently have, right? And you're still paying this off, right? And you say, woohoo, we're going to cancel the debts. And anybody who's got a debt goes, I'm all for that, right? Let's vote for that. And so, just like today, we're sitting there going, we ought to cancel all student loan debts. That's great, unless you're the college, right? That's great unless you're the one who's holding the debt. So let me ask you, how many out there are holding a debt of someone? Maybe not many of us, but maybe some of you have, loaned money out to someone, did somebody a favor that they're supposed to repay. Maybe it was a family member. Maybe it was somebody through work. Here's the thing. When you read that, you're going, no, we don't want to do that. And here's the thing. It only works if everybody does it. You see, if you cancel your debt, but somebody else holds on to it, the economy will fall apart. There's been a lot of writings over the years about this. A lot of economists and social theorists have written about this. And here's the thing, it only works if everybody does it. Because if your personal economy, your household economy is based on you getting paid back for something, your debt gets canceled, great, you don't pay it up, but you still have to have them pay for the debt. The only way for you to be able to, release them what they owe you is you have to be released what you owe somebody else. Isn't that how it works? I mean, somebody has to pay you so that you can then pay who you owe. Everybody has to do it. And Josiah said, we're going to do this. From now on, every 7 years, you got to cancel debts. All of us. He goes on, he says this. If there is a poor man among your brothers in any of the towns of the land that the Lord your God is giving you, stop there. Josiah is hearing this read out. If there's any poor man in the land that God has given you, I am the king sitting on a throne over a kingdom that God has given me. I am the king sitting on a throne over a kingdom in land that God has given us. We didn't earn it. And yes, we may have fought for it, but every battle that we ever had to fight, when you look through history up until that point, we were outnumbered, we were out-resourced, We were outmanned, outskilled in every single way, and the only way we won those battles is because God did something incredible. He promised to give us land. In some cases, we never had to fight a battle. They were just so scared of us and our God, they just laid down their weapons and just gave it to us. I am sitting on a throne over a kingdom in a land God gave to us. When you get to a place and there's poor people in the land that God gave to you, it goes on, it says, do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted towards your brother. Rather, be open-handed and freely lend whatever he needs. What do you mean freely lend? That doesn't sound free and lend don't go together. Here's what it means. You're going to lend him what he needs, but don't charge any interest. Oh yeah, he could borrow it, and yeah, he may need to pay it back, but don't charge interest. That's what freely lending means. No interest. Well, how are we supposed to make money? Not off of somebody who's in need. Goes on. Be careful. And when you see the words be careful, the reason the words be careful are there is because there's a danger that you're unaware of, because there's something lurking around the corner. There's a ledge you're about to fall off. There's something jumps out and catches you. Whatever. There's a slow moving thing that is going to slip up on you and grab you, and before you know it, you're stuck. And so anytime you tell somebody be careful, it's because you're aware of a looming danger they're not aware of. So he says be careful because there's something right there, and here's what's right there around the corner. A wicked thought that comes in your head and says, the 7th year, the year of canceling debts is near. What does that mean? Okay, we got to cancel all the debts in January. This is November. I don't want to lend any money out in November because I might have to cancel the debt in January, right? I don't want you borrowing my car in November because I might have to give you my car in January, right? I'm not going to sell you a house and mortgage it and owner financing in November because I may have to give you the house with no future payments in January. It says, be careful. There's a wicked thought right around the corner of this whole economic process. So don't let this thought come into your mind, because it goes on, it says, don't let this thought happen so that you do not show ill will towards that other person. Well, I don't want anything bad to happen to them. Really? Because you're acting like you do? He goes on and says, and then you not give him anything. He goes on and says, because this guy may then appeal to the Lord against you, and you will be found guilty of sin. Sin means missing the mark. You will have missed the mark of what God was intending. You'll have missed the whole intent of what God was trying to do in you, through you, in your relationships, in the nation, everything else. And you'll go, but I didn't do anything. You're exactly right. And your lack of not doing something was a sin. Your inaction was a sin. Instead, he says, give generously to him, even on December 31st. Give generously to him and do so without a grudging heart. Grudging heart. It's so easy for that to happen. In other words, I give because the Bible says I'm supposed to. I give because God instructed me to. Or I give because if I give, God's going to give me something back. I give because I give whatever. And here's all of that is the sound of a grudging heart. And giving grudgingly is not generosity. Generosity is an act of grace. Generosity is an act of grace. Grace is you didn't deserve it. You didn't earn it. You can't work for it. You can't pay it off. I mean, it is just grace. And that's how God gave to us. We didn't earn it, okay? We'll never be good enough. We'll never work hard enough. We'll never make up for all the wrong. He just gave out of grace. And so Josiah's sitting here and saying, okay, as a people, we were not good enough, holy enough, righteous enough. We didn't keep up our end of the bargain with God. We didn't fight hard enough. We were not skilled enough. We were not gifted enough, rich enough, or anything enough. And yet I am the king on a throne of a kingdom in a land that was given to us. That's grace. And when you look in the mirror and say, I am right before God, not because I'm perfect, not because I'm holy, not because I will ever be good enough, rich enough, wealthy enough, earn enough, anything else, simply because he gave his son to pay my debt so that I could have a relationship with him. That is grace. It's not done grudgingly. See, the word grudge means resentment. And when you hold a grudge against somebody, you have resentment towards them. Or when you hold a grudge against someone, you have entitlement, meaning they owe you something, right? I'm holding a grudge against them because they owe me an apology. right? They owe me for the lost money. They owe me for the years they took from me. They owe me for the pain that they've caused. And so when we have this word, giving grudgingly, it's basically a word of either resentment or entitlement. So when we give to gain control of others, because sometimes we'll do that, I'll give, but I expect you to change. Okay, I'll help you out with your power bill, but I expect you to get a job, and I expect you to get off of drugs, and I'll expect you to do this, expect you to do that, and all that kind of stuff. And listen, there are times when we give, we are giving in order to gain control, that somehow leveraging our gift now gives us the ability to call the shots in their life. And we want to leverage control. Or sometimes we will give in order to gain blessings from God, right? I mean, forget the lottery. We're playing the scriptures here. I'm going to give and then get back in 10, 100-fold and all of that, right? And so we're just trying to game the system. Or I'm going to give and hope to get praise from others because they'll say, oh, how generous you are and how kind you are and how benevolent you are. If you want to know the difference between what it means to have a relationship with Christ and just religion, religion is always working to game the system. And that's what this was talking about when you talk about gaming the system. How do I withhold because I don't want to have to, pay off the debt or wipe away the debt in that 7th year? So when can I give and when do I not give? And how do I give to be recognized, to be praised? Or how do I give in a way to, get rid of my guilt? Or how do I give in such a way to get God's attention and He'll give back to me? If you're trying to game the system and you're looking for the secret sauce in the scriptures to get more, that is not generous giving. That's giving grudgingly, with entitlement, expecting something in return as if God or someone else owes you. It is a veiled attempt. You may not realize it, but this is what's lurking behind, right? It's a veiled attempt to purchase someone or to purchase something. If I give, you owe me. If I give, God owes me. If I give, I'm going to get. That is just a financial exchange. That is not giving generously. That's gaming the system. The scripture goes on. Then because of this, because you did that, and when we say the word this, what are we talking about? Because they gave. No. It's not just about giving. It's about the attitude with which they gave. Yes, it's your giving, but it's also the attitude in which you gave. Because of how you gave, not just what you gave, because of this, the Lord your God will bless you in all of your work and in everything you put your hand to. We focus on this and say, how do I get this? I got to give. But when you think that way, you've already ruined your attitude. You've already exposed your attitude, right? He says, because your attitude was right, this is what's going to happen. And if this is all you're going after, then your attitude's wrong. Now, look at this next line. There will always be poor people in the land. Well, there you go. We're not going to solve the poverty problem, people. If we're not going to solve the poverty problem, let's just quit. I mean, come on. Why do I have to give to all the people who might be in need? We're never going to solve the problem. The Bible even says right here, there will always be poor people in the land. In fact, Jesus even said, the poor will always be with you. And when Jesus said this statement, there was a woman who had come in. She had taken this incredibly expensive perfume. She had washed his feet with it and his head and anointed him with this incredibly expensive perfume. It was worth far more to her than we would ever realize because this was probably her future income, her livelihood, her security for the future. And when that happened, one of his disciples looked and said, what a waste. This could have been sold and the money given to the poor. And Jesus says, the poor will always be with you. I won't always be with you. And what she did here was beautiful. And he was receiving this as worship. And you can sit there and go, well, see, we don't have to always give to the poor. Sometimes we can just lavish it on ourselves. And we are connecting these scriptures wrongly because what Jesus was saying was, look, her attitude is one of worship. The guy who raised the objection to which Jesus said the poor will always be with you, he wasn't concerned about the poor. That guy's name was Judas, and he was the one holding the money bag, and he was stealing from it. So he was wanting to leverage this scripture, or maybe Jesus was bringing up this scripture, or whatever. However that was there, he was doing something to expose this wonderful heart of this woman who was so generous, and the greedy heart of the man who's stealing out of the purse and trying to use the poor as justification to do so. There will always be poor people in the land. Therefore, I command you to be open-handed towards your brothers and towards the poor and needy in your land. You see, here's why I think there's always going to be poor people in the land. Because God is using them to change our hearts. There will always be poor people in the land. You know why? Because you need to change your hearts, and you need to see the impact of greed and the benefit of generosity. Because you need to experience the impact your life can make when you live for a cause beyond yourself. So here's the thing. As long as sin reigns in the hearts of people, and as long as God is about his redemptive activity, there's going to be poor people in the land, not because they're cursed by God, but because they are instruments of God for the rest of us. So you're going to find poor people in the land. Why? Because your heart needs to be exercised when it comes to generosity. So they're always going to be there. You're not going to solve the problem. Why? Because there's always going to be people with hardened hearts whose hearts need to be softened whenever they see someone in need. Goes on. Well, let me just hit this point. Irrational generosity, and that's irrational. Canceling all debts every 7 years, that is irrational. Right? If the rest of the world doesn't do it, we're still going to do it as a nation. That's irrational. If the nation doesn't do it, we're still going to do it as a church. That's irrational. If the church doesn't even do it, I'm going to do it as an individual. That's irrational. Are you saying, Pastor, are you saying we should go back there? Oh, wouldn't it be nice if we all went back there together? You know, I didn't say this morning only because I forgot, but I feel like I want to say it tonight. Some of us over the next Be Rich, series this year, you may say, I don't have much money to give, but I tell you what I will do. Somebody owes me some money, and I'm going to go home this week and tell them, hey, don't worry about it. You don't have to pay me back. Not because I'm expecting anything from God, but because I want to be generous, and I just want to release them from that. Irrational generosity is a core characteristic of God's people. And when Josiah was reading what God had instructed the people of Israel, he's looking around and saying, this is not a core characteristic of our people. We are greedy. We are selfish. My father and my grandfather got into idolatry simply for economic and political purposes to make themselves richer. This is not a description of us. He rips his garment and he says, from now on, this will be our description. This is what we're going for. Irrational generosity will be a core characteristic of people of God. Why? Because we serve and we worship and we follow an irrationally generous God. Now, let's go back deeper into Moses. As they have left Israel and they're wandering through the wilderness, from time to time, Moses would take this special tent and he would set it up outside the camp, but it was where everybody could see. And he would walk out of the neighborhood, out of the village, out of the encampment. He would go to this little tent, and it was called the tent of meeting. And he would go in there, and people knew that when he went in there, he was going in there to have conversations with God, to get on his face and to pray and to seek God's presence and to seek God's will and to seek God's instructions. And it says that all the people would come out of their tents, and they would just stand there and watch him go. And when he'd go into that tent, they would just wait, and they would have this anticipation of him coming out, because they know when he came out, he was going to come out with the very words of God. And that was the presence of God. And at some point, God speaks to Moses, and he says, I don't want to live outside the camp. I want to be right in the middle of the camp. I want to move the tent of meeting, as it was called, into the middle of the encampment, and all the people are going to be around. They're going to be closer to the presence of God, to the activity of God. And he said, so I want you to prepare a tent. They later call it the tabernacle. And he says, and I want you to build it a certain way, and I want it to have certain elements, and I want it to be made to certain, specifications. And I'm going to be right there among the people. And the people are so excited because God's getting ready to move from a distance right there in the middle of the neighborhood. And so the instructions come like this. And it says, Moses said to the whole community, the whole Israelite community, this is what the Lord has commanded. From what you have, take an offering for the Lord. And notice the word offering. You say, well, God just wants all my stuff. The church just wants all my stuff. No. This is an offering. It means you offer it. It's not called a taking, okay? A seizing is called an offering. You just give it. And I want, over the next several verses, I want you to look at how many times the word offering or free will or those who are willing. I just want you to see really kind of the soft invitation, so to speak, of those who are willing. The very next verse says, everyone who is willing is to bring to the Lord an offering of gold, silver, bronze, of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, colors that are very rare, very expensive, and hard to kind of, create during this time. Fine linen, goat hair. Some of these elements, it doesn't mean anything to us. We just go to the store and get linen. They don't just go to the store and get linen. Linen comes from somewhere special. We'll get to that in a minute. Goat hair, ram's skin, goes dyed of red, another hard color to make. Hides of sea cows. Where in the desert do you get a sea cow? I mean, if you think we're in the wilderness in the desert, right? Where's there's a sea cow and they got hides of sea cows? Where'd they get those, okay? Acacia wood, olive oil for the lights, spices for the anointing oil and for the fragrant incense. Now we're going jewelry shopping, ladies. It says onyx, stones, and gems to be mounted in the ephod and the breastpiece. I mean, this is the garments that the high priest wears and this little breastplate thing that he wears with these jewels in there representing all the different tribes. I want you to think about this. They have got rare fabrics. They've got rare colors. They've got linen. They got sea cow hides. Where do you get sea cow hides? They have got jewels. Okay, ask yourself the question, where did people who spent generations in slavery get this stuff? From God. Okay, when you're in slavery for generations, what do you own? Nothing. But when God was liberating them from their slavery, he tells them, Moses goes and tells them, hey, go back to your Egyptian captors, to your masters, ask them for stuff. Because we're getting ready to leave and we don't have anything. And the Egyptians were so terrified of what God had done and so terrified of God, they began to offer stuff almost like a sacrifice to please this angry God. And they just start piling on gold and silver and bronze. And they start piling on clothing. It says they take their clothing and they take herds and animals. And, the Egyptians give up their sea cow hides. I mean, because in Egypt, you're closer to the ocean, they got sea cow hides, right? Linen. Linen comes from Egypt. And so they're getting all of this stuff, not because they've earned it, not because they stole it, not because they fought for it, but because God did something so amazing that the Egyptian captors have just poured it on them. And then when they get in the wilderness, here come this Amalekite army. The first time they've ever had to face an army. They don't know how to fight. These have been slaves and servants, and they're having to go into battle for the first time. The Amalekites are coming and stealing their stuff. They go up against him, and God does a miracle, and they defeat the Amalekites. And when you defeat the army, you get that army stuff. They've got all of this stuff because God has given it to them. And they realize this is all because God's been generous to us. So it goes on. And everyone who was willing and whose heart moved him came and brought an offering, there it is again, to the Lord for the work of the tent of the meeting and for the service. So that God would move in the midst of them. How do we get God from moving outside to inside? There's a lot of things we would talk about around today. We'd sit there and go, if we want to move a God in our midst and we want him to show up right in the middle of us, well, we need to pray more, we need to fast more, we need to sing more music. It needs to be faster music or slower music, more emotional music and all that. And I can tell you right here, you know what it is? It's through generosity. It's recognizing that God has given so freely to us that we begin to freely give to one another. And I'm not just talking about stuff. I'm talking about grace and mercy and forgiveness and all of those things. And when we start acting as God acts, he moves into the middle of our presence, right here with us. It goes on, it says, all who were willing, men and women alike, came and they brought gold jewelry of all kinds, brooches, earrings, and ornaments. And then they presented their gold as a wave offering to the Lord. The reason I highlighted this wave offering is because, that's strange for us. We don't do wave offerings. But wave offering is where you would take the harvest, the grain, the wheat. Around here we got a lot of corn. And so when the corn is producing, you take the corn stalks and you just start waving them before God. You take them and sacrifice them and you're just waving this out saying, God, all of this we planted, and we plowed, but you made it grow. And so every kernel of corn on here is a gift from you. And we're just waving this unto you as a way of worshiping you because you provided. They would take the grain, they would take the wheat, and they would wave it. They're taking their stuff and they're waving it up to God saying, you dropped this on us. This is from you. Goes on. All the Israelite men and women who were willing brought to the Lord free will offerings, not required, for all the work that the Lord, through Moses, had commanded them to do. It's like we want to participate in what God's doing. God's getting ready to move from there to here. God's getting ready to be closer to us. Yes, we want to be involved in that. And they're freely giving. It goes on. It says, then Moses summoned these two guys with really hard names, Bezalel and Oholiab. Now, you go, who are these guys? Well, they're spoken of a little bit earlier. I can kind of cut that part out. But these were guys who were known for woodworking and crafts and were able to work with metals and everything else. These were artisans. These were craftsmen who were great in their trade. And that's what they were known for. So Moses summoned these two guys. And every skilled person, somebody who could put their elbow grease behind it, somebody who had intellect and they were good with their hands, right? These were the blue-collar workers. All of them, the ones the Lord had given ability and who was, again, willing to use those abilities and those gifts to come and do the work. Goes on and says, they received from Moses all the offerings that the Israelite had brought to carry out the work of constructing the sanctuary. So now you got the people coming and bringing the stuff, and now you got the ones who know what to do with the stuff, all working together. It says, and the people continued to bring free-willed offerings morning after morning after morning. It's like, hey, we brought it. Go back home, and it's like, hey, I found some more stuff. Man, I'm just really good. How are they doing on the thing? Hey, you know what? Here's some more stuff. Honey, do we really need the whatever? And it's just day after day after day. They're going back and constantly taking inventory of what else they can do. It goes on. So all the skilled craftsmen, the ones who had that ability, who were using their gifts and their talents, who were doing all the work of the sanctuary, left their work, and they said to Moses, the people are bringing more than enough for doing the work of the Lord commanded to be done. Now, this next slide I almost omitted and left out. Here's what it says, okay? Then Moses gave an order, and they sent this word throughout the camp, no man or woman is to make anything else as an offering for the sanctuary. In other words, stop bringing stuff. I almost left that out because I thought you might take that seriously and not do that, okay? But understand, like, really, could there ever be a time that I would say, hey, y'all, quit giving, right? Quit giving, quit donating, no more offerings. We're not doing that. Quit doing. Yeah, there could come a time where that happens when this happens, because it goes on, it says, and so the people were restrained from bringing more. They were pushed and said, no, don't bring anything else. No, take your offering back. Put your money back. Put your wallet up. Because what they had already had was more than enough to do what God has called them to do. Now, here's the thing. Could that happen? Maybe. I'd love to see it. But until we can say there's no more homeless, until we can say there's no one left addicted, until we can say there's no one going without food, there's not a kid who's not getting education, there's not a hungry person in our town, in our community, in our region, until we can say that there's no one who has a need among us, and until we can say everyone in our area has heard of Christ, has a relationship with Christ, or has at least had an opportunity, until we can say the work God has called us to do and the Great Commission is done, we still need to give, and we still need skilled people using their gifts and talents to do what God's called us to do. Because it's no longer about building a building. It's no longer about building a tent. It's now about building people where the Holy Spirit resides. You see, irrational generosity, this is crazy that they're given like this. This is insane. Irrational generosity towards others is the appropriate response to God's irrational generosity towards us. When it has been dumped on you like it was the people of Israel, of course they're going to give. Why wouldn't they? And when Josiah, who sits on a throne in a kingdom, in a land that was given to him, wearing a crown made of gold that was given to them, with a temple down the street and a high priest who's dressed in garments from fabric that God had given them, adorned with jewels that God had given them, decorated with articles of gold made from the stuff that God had given them. He's looking around and reading the scripture, and he's saying, oh my Lord, everything here we boast and brag about was a gift from God. How dare we be tight-fisted? How dare we be greedy? How dare we be demanding of one another? How dare we overlook the poor and the needy and those who don't have anything, because God poured it out on us when we had nothing. And he rips his robe, and he repents, and he turns the entire nation. And listen, he either says, you're going to get on board or you're going to get out. And he insisted, through even acts of violence, that you are now going to adhere to what God has called us to, or you go find you another nation, because this is who we are. Irrational generosity is an indication of our trust and our transformation, and it's impossible to ignore. You know, I remember when we were years ago and kids were young, and Isaac was really, really young. I mean, he couldn't have been but probably 5, 6 years old, maybe 7 at the most. And we were Christmas shopping. And this was at the age where we're starting to try to teach them, at least what money is about and, how to be generous with one another. And so I've got him in one end of the store, and it was in Walmart, and Krista's got the other kid somewhere else. And Isaac's throwing stuff in the buggy that he wants to get, and so he threw something in the buggy, and he wants to. And I said, "Who's that for?" And he goes, "Well, I've always been wanting one of those." Okay. Throw something else in there. Well, who's that for? Well, I wanted one of those too. And I said, well, okay, but now remember, you only got a little bit of money here. You're only limited. It's like $25 or something, something small. You still got to get for your sisters. Still got to get for your brother. And he goes, okay. So then he starts, I want to get this for Ireland. I want to get this for Isabel. I'm going to get this for. And I said, buddy, you don't have enough money. We can't get all of this. What you going to do? And so I loved it. First thing he did was pulled out the 2 things he had for himself and put them back. And I was so proud of him. And then I looked down and said, well, that's good. And I said, but I don't know if we have enough money for all of this. Would you want to get something maybe all of you could share? Because there was another item there. And I remember him going, yeah, maybe we can get something that you share. And I said, okay. You want to get something for yourself? And then he said, no, not if I can't get something for them. Man, it just made my heart so proud. Have you ever noticed how generous kids can be? Come on, parents, have you ever sent your kids to school with money and found out they gave it away to somebody else? Have you ever sent them for lunch money or something and they end up buying it for something for somebody else? Isn't it interesting how children, because they have no sense of money sometimes, are just so freely willing to just give it to anybody else? I don't know it's because they don't have a sense of money. I think it's because they have an enormous sense of trust, and their assumption is whoever gave me that can give me more. I think that's really what it is. And yet we grow up in a culture that beats that out of us. We grow up in a culture, in fact, come on, it starts with us parents, right? It starts with us where we start to drive it out of them. What do you mean you gave your money to somebody's school? I gave that for you. What do you mean you bought somebody else's whatever? I gave that to you. And we start to drive out the generosity, and in its place we put a scarcity mentality. And when we have a scarcity mentality, it is very hard to trust because there just might not be enough. But irrational generosity is an indication that there is trust, that wherever this came from, there will be more. And whoever gave me this the first time can give me more. It's also an indication for us adults, especially, of transformation, that when greed or when scarcity or fear and anxiety and all that other stuff is taken over, when suddenly we turn back around and we're generous to the point of irrational generosity, boy, something about this changed. Something about their heart that was so consumed on themselves and is now looking to others. There's something different about them. And here's the other thing. Irrational generosity is almost impossible to ignore. When you give, when you serve, when you volunteer, when you show up to the point that somebody says, why are you doing this? No, that's not necessary. You don't have to give all of that. No, that's too. Why would you do that? Listen, it gives us the opportunity to talk about a generous God and how God was so generous to us. That's the impact we get to make. And so when Josiah was reading this law, he turned the entire nation around, in part, because he put God first, of course, got rid of those idols, but because he said, we're going to be people of generosity. That's what Be Rich is all about. And so here's our game plan. Here's how we do this. Today or tonight, we're giving. when you come up in the moment, the tables are here, and on these tables is communion. It's the bread and it's the body of Jesus. And it just reminds us of how generous God was, that he held nothing back from us. He poured on all of his blessings. He revealed himself in his presence. He gave his son, and his son gave his all, including his flesh, his body, and his blood. And we can now be transformed and have new life because of a generous God who had a generous son who generously and freely gave forgiveness and mercy to us, and we received it. And so it's only natural for us to now be generous towards others. And through that generosity, you're going to find joy. And through that change of heart and that demonstration of trust, God moves in among us. And then next week, we're going to serve. We're not going to have a night service next week, okay? Write that down, mark it down, okay? If you come up, the building's going to be dark. Because I really hope that you can. I know some people work and you can't, but I really hope that you can make a special arrangement next week. Meet us at 9:30 in the morning. We're going to load buses. If for some reason you need a carpool or caravan, but we're going to load buses. We're going to go to different places in this community, and we're going to serve people. You say, what are we going to do? It's like find a need and fill it. We've got some things that we, arranged and all that. And we'll explain all that next week. But we're going to go out and serve. And there's something for everybody, okay? If you got little kids, well, what are we going to do with them? Bring them with you, okay? There's things that small kids will be able to do. If some of you are saying, well, I'm just not able to get around as much, and my age is caught up with me, and I don't know if I can be out in the weather, be with people. Idea hit me this morning just as we were getting ready for service, and I said, you know what? They can make cookies, and they can make brownies, and they can make cakes, or they can make whatever, and they can bring it, package it all up individually. We'll go find people to give it to. We'll find somewhere else to go give it, but that can be your act of service, okay? You're the skilled laborer in the scriptures. Just do what God's enabled you to do, and we'll find a way to bless people with it. But we want to do that. Then on the 17th, love. And what I'm asking here is, hey, let's just invest in someone, invite them. Okay, say this with me, okay? Come sit with me. Let's say it. Come sit with me. Come on, one more time. Come sit with me. When we're out serving, and they'll say, hey, what are y'all doing? Who are you with? Why are you doing this? You can sit there and say, hey, we're from the Bridge Church and all that. We just want you to know God loves you, and we're just here to help. What can we do? Is there anything we can do to help you? Or, hey, we're at a store in Helen. We're saying, hey, we're just here. We're just going to wash your windows. Is it okay we wash your windows? Hey, you don't know something that nobody wants to do and everybody wish somebody would? Clean a bathroom at a fast food restaurant. Oh, my gosh. Have you ever gone into a bathroom at a fast food restaurant? Some of you go, I don't want to do that. That's grudgingly. Come on, we're going to be generous, right? Go in there and just say, I'm going to clean the bathrooms. I'm going to clean those public bathrooms in Helen. Don't you wish somebody would? Somebody goes, why are you doing this? Because God so generously gave to us, we just want to give back. Because God's been so good to us, we want to be good to others. Hey, why don't you come sit with me next week at the Bridge? Why don't you just come sit with me next week at the Bridge? Well, what's that going to be like? We serve a God who loves, and we're going to talk about how much God loves you and how much God is love. And hopefully we'll be able to show you our love for you as well. If you do it, I'll take you to lunch. That's called invest and invite. Well, that might cost me a little bit. Yep, will. Might cost more than you have. You trust the one who gave it to you to give you more? And then, on November 24th, we're going to have a party. We're going to party like rich people. What do rich people do? They give money away. That's what they do, right? At least we think they do. So we're going to party like rich people, and we're going to have different organizations. There's organizations that help with homeless, organizations that help with the hungry. There's organizations that help in our school system. There's organizations that help with kids who sleep on the floor. There's organizations that help with single moms and unexpected moms. We've got organizations that, there's just with addiction and recovery, organizations that help with women who are coming out of, sex trafficking and all of that and just rebuilding their broken lives. Listen, they're going to be here, and we're just going to give them money and bring them up here and introduce them to you. They'll be in the foyer, and if you want more information on how you can keep supporting them or how you can volunteer with them, I want you to do that. In fact, some of you may say, hey, I think I want to become a weekly, monthly sponsor of some of these people. Just do that. Well, doesn't that bother you as a pastor that it might not all come to you? No, because I trust, and I want you to trust. And I just believe that when we do this and we're irrationally generous, that the world will take notice and God will move in among us and lives will be changed. That's what I want. We won't have service that night either on the 24th because I want everybody here that morning. You say, well, what's pie day? Bring a pie, a sweet one or a savory. Like a pot pie, that's savory. Sweet pie, pecan pie, my favorite. Okay, bring one of those, and we're just going to all eat afterwards, and we're going to have pie day and have a huge celebration. Let me tell you, you want to be here for this because I've already told you. We've already gotten ahead of you. And we're going to be impacting hundreds, if not thousands of lives in at least 6 different counties across our region. You say, really, how are we going to do that? I promise you. You want to hear a miracle, you need to be here, because what I'm telling you is we've already gotten ahead of you. And we're going to impact people's lives to the tunes of millions of dollars. Okay, in excess of $1 million. You go, how in the world is that possible? Trust me, you just give tonight irrationally and see what happens when we announce what's happening here on the 24th. It will blow you away what a church our size can do. It's amazing. It's amazing. So here's what I want us to do tonight as we're getting ready to close. There's giving buckets up here, and there's a bucket up here for dirty cups. Please make sure you get those right. Each week we get some soggy dollars, okay? So here's the thing, okay? The buckets are here. Instead of being passed, they're on the table. If you want to give mobile, take out your phone, just text the word give to this number right here, 706-717. If you text that, they'll give you some prompts. It'll have you punch in. It's all secure. I promise we're not storing this information, but you can give that way. You can give online. Use your device and go to thebridgeonline.cc, right? You can go to the kiosk out there. If you want to do debit and credit cards, there's a place to swipe, okay? If for some reason the internet blinks and it doesn't work, you can do the same thing through either of these with your credit card. You just type it in, okay? But I am unashamedly asking all of us to give something, because on the 24th, we're going to give 100% of what comes in. From now till Saturday, we're giving it away. 100% of it's going to go away. And then I want you to be here on the 24th to celebrate and see what God does through us and among us. As I close this in prayer, you can respond by bringing your gift and also receiving communion. If you need prayer, just kind of step to the side or look for someone who's here serving at the table, and we'll be glad to pray with you. Heavenly Father, thank you for your generosity to us. God, don't let us ever take that for granted. Everything that we have has been a gift from your hand because you put breath in our lungs. Lord, the skills that we use to make an income, you gave us the skills. Lord, the aptitude and the intellect that got us through school. Heavenly Father, the intellect and the wisdom that got some of us around school. Lord, all of these things, you have just blessed us, our health, our physical being. Lord, our relationship with you, the character that is being formed and shaped by your Holy Spirit to reflect you, all of that is from you. Lord, salvation and a right relationship with you, the ability to be in right standing with you and to forgive others and be in a right standing with them, all of it comes from you. So God, would you help us to get the grip of wealth from around our hearts, the scarcity mentality that keeps us afraid and worried. Lord God, may we exercise our trust in you. Heavenly Father, may we leverage everything you've given us to participate in what you're doing so that you can move into the middle of where we are in this activity and people will be drawn to you. Lord, everything we do, everything we give is for your glory and not ours. Lord, if you never give us anything else, we're not giving to get, because if we never get anything else from you, Lord, we've been blessed. And so, Heavenly Father, would you help shape our hearts to be generous, giving out of grace as an expression of grace and of nothing else. It's in the name of your Son who poured out your grace on us that we ask these things and that we do these things. Amen.